Thank you, FA. What a wonderful world entrepreneurship can offer. Imagine how I felt when I was 17 years old, standing on a cold street in Istanbul. I had just left everything I knew in Iran. My father, my siblings, my friends, my home, all that I knew. And I was about to say goodbye to the last person I knew in Turkey, my mother. She came and gave me a hug, got in the car, and left. And here I was left in the cold streets of Istanbul, all by myself at 17 years old. I knew no one. I had very little money. I couldn't speak the language. I was scared. The reason for this was I had grown up in a loving family and I had gone to a school for the gifted. We had a revolution happen in Iran and a war that ensued. So with all of that, my parents thought that I was a bright young woman who really should pursue my higher education. And in order to do that, they thought I need to find my way to the United States. With that goal, I left everything. And here I was standing, trying to figure out how to survive. I was scared, I was sad, and maybe in some respects I was numb. But I knew that I had to be self-reliant. So I was. I learned to communicate by just listening to others. I started making connections with people and asked for help. With that, I learned how to find myself a passport. And then through the same school that I had gone to in Iran, someone in the United States found me admission to a college in the United States. That was miraculous, because back then, Iranians were not only not allowed out of Iran, they were not allowed into the United States. So I used everything I knew by staying close to my vision. I knew that I wanted to pursue higher education. So I knew if I were given the opportunity to explain it to the American embassy, that I was going to pursue higher education, but I also was all about contributing wherever I lived, that I was going to be granted the visa. So I was. With the little bit of money that I had, I bought myself a plane ticket and flew to the United States. When I landed in Los Angeles, I was excited. I was a little confused, and it was, now what? I still didn't have my parents. I still didn't have a lot of money. I still was very young and didn't know what to do here. So I did the very first thing that I could do as a 17, 18-year-old. I started working at a gas station. I worked at a gas station full-time and I went to college full-time. But the challenge was that the college that I was admitted to was a private school and I couldn't afford it. So I changed schools to a public school and I continued to work full-time and went to college full-time. I started as a math major. And my teachers then would say, we've never seen anybody work as hard and study as hard as you do. I was sitting in classrooms with mostly boys, and I was setting the curve in every way. It was the highest grade across the board. But even as a 17-year-old working at a gas station, I had this vision. I used to tell people, I'm going to run a large company. Back then, General Motors was the company. So I would say, someday I can run something like General Motors. You would think, why would a young immigrant poor woman from the Middle East think about running a big company? But that was my vision, and I was going to pursue it. With that vision, I switched majors at school because I decided if I'm going to run a business, I need to understand the language of business, and the language of business is finance. So I switched over to finance. And working full-time, going to school for full-time, earning good grades paid off. It was at the end of my college career that I was offered a job from all of the big 8 accounting firms. So back then, there were the largest accounting firms in the United States. There were 8 of them. And I received an offer from every one of them, which was really unusual because my school was not known for business or for accounting. I decided to work for Ernst & Young, EY. This is because months before my graduation, Ernst & Young had offered me an internship, which I took. An internship was even more unique because there were only 8 positions open in all of the greater Los Angeles area. And again, my school wasn't the place for them to recruit. So it was really unique that I did earn that spot. And I do believe it had a lot to do with the fact that I had worked full-time, gone to college full-time. So I accepted the job at EY. And here I was, a newly minted college graduate, soon to be a CPA, certified public accountant, and I had arrived. I applied myself. I worked really hard and I got really great reviews. My reviews would say hardworking, reliable, smart, on the fast track. And then I paused. You see, I still had that vision. I wanted to build and run something bigger. But I also had another new vision. And that was I have to stay close to my value system. I knew someday I wanted to have children. I didn't have them then. And I knew that when I had children, I wanted to be involved with them. I always said I wanted to be a mother who happened to work. I didn't want to work any less. I just wanted to be there, have more flexibility. And back then, it's not the case today, but back then, not a lot of women made it to the upper levels at those firms. And those that did paid a pretty heavy price, which I wasn't willing to do. So as much as I loved working at Ernst & Young, I had to leave. So I had it good, but I wanted better. And I remember, sat in my car and cried. Because who does that? Somebody that comes with the background of financial insecurity and places that I've been, why would I give up something that's kind of sure for what I think is even better and more suited to me? Because I really believed that I had to live to my own vision and full potential. So with that, I got a job at a mortgage bank. And the reason was, if finance is the language of business, I wanted to understand how to operate it. So I wanted to understand what it takes to execute. So I started working in operations. And then soon, the chief financial officer of that mortgage bank was about to leave. And I thought, I'm going to ask to be promoted to the chief financial officer. Friends and family were nervous. They told me not to do it. It's going to backfire. And this is where I learned it's good to hear people out, but you don't have to listen to them. I went into my CEO's office and I said, I think we both agree that I'm the best fit for this job. Will you let me have it? And he said, yes. So here I was, Chief Financial Officer, running 22 branches. We were originating hundreds of millions of dollars of loan, packaging them and selling them in secondary marketing. I was managing $1 billion of servicing portfolio, all in my late 20s, great experiences. And then we decided to sell this bank to a larger bank. So I learned about transactions and negotiating, how to make sure a transition happens smoothly. And so after we sold, I had a choice. I could have looked for another chief financial officer job, because now I had my Ernst & Young background. Now I had been a chief financial officer at a young age. It made sense to find another CFO position. Staying true to my vision of someday running something big and wanting to be a mother who happened to work, I decided that I wasn't going to pursue another full-time job like that, and I was going to go out on my own. Pretty scary. How would I find new clients? How would I be able to manage all of that? But I did. I decided to offer my experience and expertise to companies that wanted to grow and could use my services, but couldn't or shouldn't get someone like me full-time. So I became an off-site CFO. Great experience, was exposed to a lot of good companies. And then time came where I decided I really wanted to pursue entrepreneurship at a company. Why that made sense to me was that I knew now I've earned so much good experience with finance, with operations, being exposed to a lot of different companies and how they operate, that I felt like I knew how to help build a company. So with that in mind, I started working, came across, did a project for a company that was relatively small in the franchising space in home improvement. And though I wouldn't say I knew home improvement that well, I knew that there were, between my past experiences and understanding of strategy, this is where I could actually make a contribution to help grow. So that's where I stayed. The first few years of this journey was very difficult for all of us. It was a relatively small company, and we had to make a lot of changes, adjustments, try to figure out how do we grow this thing? How do we get it to where we think we can? How do we do that? It took us years to figure all of that out. And then once we did, we started growing pretty well. And for the next 10 years, we continued to grow. But those 10 years were not easy. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people that run businesses, you make a lot of decisions, and you make a lot of bad ones as well as good ones. So we made some bad ones, but luckily we made more good ones. I was the only woman in the ranks, and that was not easy because, one, I had no one to look up to say, well, this person's made it, let me emulate them. But also, in the world of finance back then, there were mostly men. In franchising back then, there were mostly men. And in home improvement, certainly mostly men. So really, people weren't used to someone in my position that looked like me. So I had to work extra hard. I had to really find a way to find common ground and prove myself in a lot of ways. I was exhausted. I was a mother. I had a lot of responsibilities, and as well, I was helping grow a company in an environment that didn't quite understand who I was. I always reminded myself, Shirin, just do the right thing, do the right thing. And of course, in that time frame, we had the Great Recession that hit, that was in the housing market, and we were in home improvement. And I had my brain tumor that we talked about, and that was a very difficult healing journey. So it wasn't fun and games 10 years, but there was a lot of joy in it because I got to really help grow a company as well as stay close to my family and to my values. So after some time, it was clear that the company was ready for its next strategic move, growth. This was about 2012 and 13. And to us, it became evident that we really needed to bring someone like a private equity firm that has the experience, expertise, know-how, and would allow those of us who wanted to leave to do so. I had never raised private equity at the time. I knew the space, but I hadn't raised it. So I set out to learn, make connection, and ask for help. Reconnected with my old friends from Ernst & Young, and it took me about 2 years to find the right bankers and the right private equity partners. The idea was they were going to come in and let the rest of us leave because we had been there for so long. But as a condition of this transaction, our private equity partners asked me to stay on board as CEO and help them achieve the goals that they had set out. I accepted that challenge. Pretty immediately, we started to enhance everything. We left no stones unturned. We looked at each of our brands, by then we had 3 brands, and how they're presented to the consumers, and updated and upgraded those. We changed the way and enhanced the way we trained and supported our franchisees. We actually developed technology platforms that helped our franchisees really use it as a management CRM tool, sales tool, and also place orders to suppliers. We changed all of our local area marketing to become more digital and created the digital platform, and many, many more things. So the end result was the company had taken 20-some years to become of some value in 2015. In the next 3.5 years, we doubled that value. So what took 20-some years to achieve, we doubled in 3.5 years. By the time 2019 came around, I knew it was time for us to bring in new partners so that our private equity partners could exit successfully. That's the goal. And so we did. It was a very successful exit. Our private equity partners to this day consider it as one of their best transactions. We still are highlighted on their accomplishments. And by the time we made that transaction happen, I had been there 20 years and it was time for me to step down. By the time I left, our franchisees were installing 70,000 units per week. We had become of size. So you may wonder, how did you do that? That's the whole point of this conversation. How did you make all of these entrepreneurial successes happen? Well, we can sit here and talk for days and months about entrepreneurship and how to become successful, and all, many books have been written on that. But if I were to use hindsight and distill it down to a few principles that we can share today, I think there are 7 of them. So you might consider grabbing a pen so that we can really dig in with what those principles are. Principle number 1. Know your product or service and why people buy it. If you can write down what your product is or service is and why people want to buy it in a sentence or 2, you got something. Because 1, you know, and 2, you can communicate that. You can communicate it to your employees, to your teams, to your suppliers, to your partners, and more importantly, to your consumers, because they will receive what you put out. Let me use an example. Early on in the life of the company, we were selling window coverings. So question is, why would people buy window coverings from us? They can buy it from a local store, they can buy it from another supplier. Why us? We took the time to think that through. What is truly our product? And why are people buying from us? Well, we landed on this answer. Our process was that our franchisees would go into customers' home and sit with them and design with them in mind. So it was custom designed collaboratively with our consumer. That's why people were buying from us. So once we really identified that effectively, we could build on that. And we actually built multiple brands on the same chassis. So principle number 1, know your product or service and why people buy it. I'm going to use another very simple example because this is the big one. If you tell me, Shirin, I love donuts and I want to open up a donut shop, I would say, okay, it may work. But if you say, Shirin, I love donuts. When I go to my local coffee shop, I see people come in often asking for donuts, and the coffee shop doesn't have it. I think I'm going to open up a donut shop close to it. I'd say, you're on to something. That's very important. Second principle, have a vision and expect it to happen. A vision is not a goal. It's not to say, I'm going to sell 100 units next month. A vision is more aspirational. It's directional. It's what a 17-year-old thinks about, I want to run a big company. But even in an entrepreneurial company, that's what you need to really think through. Where do I want this thing to go? And then hope is a great emotion, but I'm not encouraging to only have hope. Expect it as if it's here, that you've earned it and it's going to happen. So when I was CEO, I was a newly appointed CEO, even though I had been at the company for years and years and had been running so many of the parts of the company. I was going to get on stage and encourage our franchisees to follow our lead and believe that we're going to continue to grow the company even faster, better. And I knew that if people understood the vision, what we were going for, they would be great partners in this journey. The vision was, if a consumer thinks about doing anything home improvement, they should think of one of our brands. It's a bit lofty, and we weren't quite there yet, but setting that vision made a big difference because it rallied everybody around where we wanted to go. I believe that's a big part of the reason we were as successful as we were. So 2, have a vision and expect it to come true. 3, know your numbers. And promise you, I'm not saying that because my background is finance. I can't tell you how many business owners I've come across, whether they were small business owners or large business owners, where their failure was really because they didn't understand the dynamics of how their finances work together. You need to understand it. Whether you're a finance person or not, get someone to help you, but become a student of it. Because if you don't know what goes into creating your bottom line, then how are you going to pull all the right levers to get there? That is the biggest pitfall for most business owners. So know your numbers. 4, be a problem solver. What does that mean? As a business owner, as somebody who runs a business, even as a leader, you come across a lot of problems. You have to learn how to solve those problems. I say that every problem has a solution. If you haven't found the solution, you have to change your perspective, your point of view. You may not be looking at the problem right. In the way of example, early on in our life at the company, we wanted to find a way to have people come in and invest with us, as they do in the world of franchising, and hadn't really found a way to unlock the mystery of how to get more people to want to do this. We knew we had good systems. Why are more people not that interested in doing it? And we perfected our offerings, we perfected our training, we perfected the way we connected with our potential buyers, and it just wasn't really getting the traction we were looking for. Until we said, wait, maybe this is not even the problem. Maybe the problem isn't with what we're offering, but it's with people's perception of what we're offering. So you know what we did? We doubled the price. And it worked because it shifted the thought process in the consumer's mind that this was a viable business. And it was, by the way. Our systems are fantastic and people stayed in business for a long, long time. So be a problem solver. Principle number 5, be flexible. Markets change, consumers change, behaviors change, and so should you. History is riddled with companies that didn't embrace change. They weren't flexible. They thought, if I'm doing things one way, then that's the way it's going to be forever. Do you remember video rental companies that kind of stuck to their guns and they're like, we're going to have storefronts and you come rent from us? Well, streaming video came and ate their lunch. There were lots of travel agencies that didn't make their changes on a timely basis, newspapers, bookstores, cable, a lot of examples of companies that were out there, were doing really well, but didn't embrace the change. We need to be, as entrepreneurs, agile, and we need to be flexible. So, as an example, one of the biggest changes I made as CEO was the way our franchisees operated in their local marketing. We had been successful with traditional local marketing, print, mailers, things like that. But it was apparent that consumer behavior had changed. People like to be online. People like to consume social media. So it was our time to offer the same to our franchisees to be able to do. And we did. And I think that was another great reason why our franchisees did as well as they did. 6, have empathy. Have empathy to your employees, partners, suppliers, and consumers. Why? Because when you have empathy, you can actually meet people where they are. You can learn from them, you can teach them, you can understand their circumstance, so you can adjust. What I did in 2016 is what I call it a listening tour. I went around and I met with employees that now I had known for years and years in small groups and talked to them. Asked them about where they thought enhancements should happen, what we should do differently better. And it was fantastic. I learned so much from that. We did the same with our suppliers. We brought them in and talked to them, shared with them our vision or strategy, and heard them out. And similarly with our franchisees. Empathy is significant as a leader. You have to have empathy. And 7, get help. Entrepreneurs are often good at something. Know your strengths. And when you're not as strong, get help. Get people to come in and help you, whether they're consultants, advisors, whatever they may be. And I want to add to the top of that list, get help in the way of working with mentors or people that can help you really think through your business. I didn't do that effectively, especially as CEO. And that made things very, very hard. I was such a doer, I was just doing things. But in hindsight, if I had found a way to work with a mentor, to be able to rely on a network of people who could help me and hear me out, I think life would have been a lot easier and efficient. I know this foundation offers mentorship. I would take advantage of it. So those are the 7 principles that I was going to share with you today. Remember, I was a 17-year-old immigrant with a vision that I expected to come true, and I worked hard, and I asked for help wherever I could. I could have done better with asking for help. Your goals may be different. Your circumstances may be different. You still have to do all of that good work. Our job here and with this session is to help you learn from what we've done so that we can shorten your journey from where you are to where you want to be and make it easier, better. I did a panel discussion a few years ago with a number of women CEOs, and we were told that of all of the companies in the United States that are backed by private equity, only 3% are run by women. 3% is a rounding error. If you consider that of those women, not that many look like me. They're not from the Middle East. They're not immigrants. I'm such a small subset of those. I'm so proud of the work we've done. And in 2019, Forbes took notice and included me, my story, on the cover of Forbes.com on International Women's Day. So you may say, Shirin, You've now gone through this journey and you've arrived. You sold the company, you built it, you've been acknowledged. What next? I want to say if life were a play, Act 1 was me finding my way to the United States. Act 2 was proving that I can build something and that I could stay true to my values. And now it's time for Act 3. Jane Fonda says, Act 3 is what makes sense of Acts 1 and 2. So this is my Act 3, being right here with you. I am passionate about people, helping people, entrepreneurs, and specifically women entrepreneurs like you to accomplish your dreams, your vision. I'll do what I can with sending out hints, helping, doing this kind of work to help as much as I can, because I've been you. I'm not exactly you, but I've been a mother. I've had the responsibility of running a family, the responsibility of running a company. I've dealt with the situations of lots of adversity, being a female. I've dealt with illness, and I am here. So proud and passionate to be here with you. I'm also helping companies grow as board director and as advisor. So before I close, I'd like to pause here and answer some of your specific questions. Okay, so a question is, what would you advise to a woman woman entrepreneur who's struggling to secure buy-in from friends and family? It's a very good question, and I bet you it's a common question. Oftentimes, people come from their own insecurities. They want to give you advice. They want to have you do things that fit their needs. I respect it and embrace it, but you don't have to. You can hear people out, but you don't have to listen to them. So then the question is, gosh, then it's kind of lonely. Start finding people like you. Rely on groups, rely on mentors, rely on other women that have done that. You are in a unique position, as entrepreneurship is unique, and as being a leader is a unique place to be. Take advantage of whatever you can. I think sometimes even using groups that are not work related, if you have a hobby, lean on that. Because at the end of the day, this is your journey, this is your path, and you have to be able to take it, but do use and ask for help any way you can. The other question is, you mentioned your experience with a life-threatening brain tumor. What lessons did you learn from that experience? Did it help or hinder your entrepreneurial journey? What a good question. The brain tumor was a huge setback. I never thought I was going to have a health issue like that. And it ended up being pretty complex. I had a 10-hour surgery and then it failed, and another 5-hour surgery right after. And I was having all kinds of issues with everything failing, and I wasn't able to move my neck for months. I had to learn to walk, and it was a rough place to be. But I think in hindsight, it was one of the better lessons in life that I learned. And here's some of the lessons that I actually think absolutely helped with my entrepreneurial journey. I learned to slow down and to take one step in front of the other. So in fact, that is how I recovered. I would go take a couple of steps and go lie down and come back and do it again. Life is about consistently taking one foot in front of the other and expecting, as I've said through here, that you'll be fine. It is with that expectation, it is with that hope that I continued down this journey of recovery. And the gift that it gave me at the end was that I had new appreciation for the life around me, for my life, and it made me better in tune with what I expected out of my life and what I wanted. The people that I wanted to include in my life, the kinds of things that I wanted to do really changed me for the better. So I would say don't let a brain tumor or life-threatening illness bring you to that point. Reality is really surround yourself with people that you want to be with and the work that you want to do, and take one step in front of the other. The other question is, do you have any advice on how to manage so many different priorities and responsibilities, such as a family, a career, health issues? Yes. Set priorities based on your value system. So it's important, whether you're really focused on your own business or your life, to know what things are the most important to you. For me, it was that I wanted to be close to my children and close to my family. That was significant to me. That was the driver. And everything else would have to take second place. But it didn't mean that the other things didn't happen. They just helped me set my priorities straight. I knew that I wanted to do right by people, so I made sure that all my decisions with regards to even priorities at work revolved around doing the right things. In other words, oftentimes companies sit back and create their own core values. For me, as an individual, you have to have strong core values. Those are the things that would help you navigate through the choppy waters. Sometimes some things would have to have emergency priority, but in general, that's the direction you want to go. The other question is, how can I keep my focus and hold on to my value and be consistent in growing that passion like you? I think really defining what's important to you is significant. If it's important to you to grow your organization in a way that you are good citizens of your environment or the world around you, then there is a higher purpose. This is why I say the vision isn't about, I'm going to sell 100 units next month. That's a goal. If your vision is that I want to create an organization that provides a service of a certain kind, whatever that kind is in your decision, to the world, then that by itself will generate the passion for you to get there. It goes above and beyond just the next thing to do and the next thing to do. That's why vision is so important. That's why vision needs to be aspirational, something that you can work towards, because during those not so great times, it's the vision that would get you through. And so I think that's where the passion will come in. I have another question that is, how did you, as a young person, oh, here it is. How did you know that you were really ready to leave, and what kind of support did you have? I don't know if I was ever that clear I was ready to leave. That's the whole point. I don't think there's any perfect moment in time, and I don't think there's any perfect next opportunity to go to. Maybe for some people, some of the time, but in general, I don't know if there's that perfect point where you go, I'm very clear. I think the lack of clarity is the underlying theme throughout everything I've done. It may seem now, looking at the hindsight, it worked well together in harmony, but frankly, a lot of times it didn't. I remember there were times that I was helping grow the company and I would sit back and say, what have I done? I mean, I could have, my friends, my peers had moved up the ladders and they were partners of big firms and they had great titles. And here I am still clawing my way up in this journey. I don't know if there's an actual right timing, but there is a timing. So at some point you just have to take the step. So that's where I think the distinction is that once I knew this is where I wanted to go, I was willing to take the step as uncomfortable, as uncertain as it was. And the kind of support that I had was really around my family, my friends, people that were outside of work, I knew were going to be there for me regardless. But I don't want to say that, unfortunately, back then, there weren't as many support mechanisms as there are today. If I were doing all of that work today, I would rely on my network of women that I know and leaders that I know, and I would really rely on them, which is a good way to go. The question is, what would your advice be for women entrepreneurs that's struggling to make their entrepreneurial venture work? How long should they work at their business, and at what point should they accept its failure? It's a very loaded question because who really knows? It's very unique to a business. It's very unique to an individual's plans. What I do want to say is entrepreneurship is not an easy road, but of course, anything that's worth pursuing, generally speaking, is not that easy. You want to apply basic fundamentals of business to any business, large or small. Those things are know your product and service and why people buy it, because once you know, you can build more on that. Also, really, really be good at knowing your numbers, because those things would have to mix well together. And so if your business is fundamentally sound, which if it's not quite there yet, get help, get advice, and get it there. And then know that there will be bumps in the road. And I don't know if I would call bumps in the road failure. I would consider bumps in the road as warning signs to let you know whether or not you're going in the right direction. And of course, like I said, be flexible. If your direction isn't quite great or good, find other ways of getting there. You know, one thing that you want to make sure of is that when that voice of uncertainty comes into play, you want to be in tune and make sure that that voice is truly a voice about the business and not something that you've learned through life in your past history. Because people, and especially women, have heard a lot around about what they can't do, what's not going to happen, it's not likely to happen. Plus, you haven't seen a lot of people that look like you have made it. So let's make sure that it's not those voices and those interferences veering you off your course. But of course, be realistic, get help, make sure your fundamentals are sound. The other question is, my biggest struggle as an entrepreneur is more personal than professional. How did you best support your own heart and protect your personal well-being during the most stressful times? Fantastic question, because I actually had to learn the hard way. I was so in tune with working and making sure that I'm productive and I'm doing right at work, that I was going to be present for my children, that I was going to do the right thing in the world around me, that oftentimes I forgot about me. And I paid the hefty price. The hefty price was that I was ill. I'm not saying that I brought on a terminal illness onto myself, but it certainly didn't help. And it wasn't until I actually slowed down recently that I realized I needed to have taken more time to take care of my own well-being. I think that's a common problem for those of us that are high achievers, also want to do well by others, that somehow in that mix, we are forgotten. I think the way to not forget about yourself is actually do exactly that. Remind yourself on a daily basis. Is it maybe a 10-minute in the morning? Is it maybe something you like to do? Make time to do that. Make sure that your partners, your family understand that that's what you need and have them be partners with you in that, because at the end of the day, that's best for everybody around. If you're well taken care of, you can as well take care of others much, much better. How did you face making big decisions that might not just impact you, but your employees also? Oh, that's so important. And it was fantastically hard. Empathy is critical in leading an organization. And with empathy means really paying attention to how things impact everybody. So the way I believe I did it was looking at decisions from multiple points of view. So a decision wasn't ever going to be based on one advantage to the company or even an advantage to me. It was, how is it in totality helpful for everybody? And, you know, what that helped inform was perhaps the same decision would be made, but considerations would be given to others to help us along. So let's assume one of the decisions, not assumed, one of the decisions we made was to rebrand all of our brands. Well, that would impact a lot of people that would have to adjust to the new brand. And rather than just make that decision in a vacuum, I brought them in. We reviewed what we could do. What are the best next steps? Do we do it quickly? Do we do it slowly? In what format do we do those things so that we can help everybody move along and really consider their points of view in the decision making? This is critically important with employees. I believe a good leader has to be a very good listener, and you have to make sure that as you're making big decisions, that those decisions are bounced off of different people and where they stand, so that you can make your decisions more holistic, better thought through, and more encompassing of the needs of everybody else. But of course, at the end of the day, you have got to make big decisions, and that's the job of a business owner and entrepreneur. You mentioned your self-belief, saying one day you'll manage something like General Motors. Which companies do you think might inspire you today if you were starting out? And do you think there are more women role models like you for young women entrepreneurs to inspire them today? I don't know if I can think of companies off the top of my head. I do know companies that are run by really good women that I've enjoyed and I thought are inspirational. Some of those you may or may not have heard. They may be more United States based, but I believe that in general, I like companies that have an inclusive culture that includes people from all walks of life, not only in their employee ranks, but also in the ranks of how they appeal to the consumers. You know, companies that understand their consumers. I'm encouraged to see more and more women entrepreneurs and just women leaders being highlighted, shown. Unfortunately, I don't think there are as many in the minority segment of women. I'm happy to see there are more women of minority, women of color that are being shown, but just not quite there yet. So I'm hoping things like this will encourage more women to be highlighted, because representation matters. I think if I had growing up, if I had seen somebody that kind of looked like me talk about being an entrepreneur or being a leader, it would have made my journey a lot better, faster, easier. Did you notice differences in ways of working between Iran and the US? And do you have any tips for someone that might work across borders and need to allow for such differences? I've been away from Iran for such a long time that I don't know if I can speak to how things are run over there. What I can tell you is kind of consistent with the essence of this summit, that people are people, and the basic principles that apply to how you work with people in general should apply across the board, with regard and respect for the differences, and with an understanding that everybody deserves to be included, regarded, and supported through what they want to do, as long as what they want to do is bringing value to the communities around them. I think there are clearly differences, cultural differences across borders, and I think it is our job to find commonality, and those commonalities are more about human dignity and respect. And I think if we stay close to those, we can work with pretty much anybody. I missed 7 principles that Shirin shared. Could you possibly repeat them? This is a great segue to my close, because I actually was going to repeat them. So if you bear with me, I'm going to pause for a minute and then come back to it with the close that I'm about to do. I want to thank you all for allowing me to share this, my story, and hopefully you found some elements in it that you found helpful and useful to you. The 7 principles that we discussed today are: know your product or service and why people buy them. 2, have a vision and expect it to happen. 3, know your numbers. Know what the ingredients are that go into running your business. 4, be a problem solver. If you haven't found a solution to a problem, maybe you're not looking at the problem the right way. 5, be flexible. The world changes, people change, so should you. 6, have empathy. Empathy for your employees, for your suppliers, for your partners, and for your consumers. And get help. Entrepreneurs think that they're very good at everything, and we're not. You're good at some things, but you're not good at everything. Get help where you can, and get help in the way of mentorship. Those are the 7 principles. So as a 17-year-old, I thought someday I was going to run something large. I thought it was General Motors. I didn't know what it turned out to be, but the vision was there. And it really helped me use hard work, self-reliant, ask for help where I could to achieve. So as a much bigger girl in 2018, I remember I was standing backstage at this beautiful hotel. It was a gala. People were really well dressed. And the announcer announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, Entrepreneur of the Year, Shirin Behzadi." I walked on stage. I was happy and excited. I gave my acceptance speech. I grabbed my award and I walked off stage. My son came up to me and said, "Mom, when you were 17 working at a gas station, did you ever think you're going to be here?" And I said, "Yes, I did. I encourage you. I challenge you. I dare you to set a vision and expect it to happen, because it will."